Eggerichs after we have just really gone negative and depressed our listening audience. We want to welcome Dr. Eggerichs, who's founder and president of Love and Respect Ministries, and he is the author of a new book titled Love and Respect in the Family, the respect parents desire, the love children need. Dr. Eggerichs, thank you so much for being our guest, and sorry to talk about Obamacare just before you came on.
Well, no, I appreciate the invitation, and maybe we could segue by saying we're going to focus in on those things that ensure family health.
Yeah, hey, there you go. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome to the program, and your earlier book about marriage, the love she most desires, the respect he desperately needs, kind of uses that same love and respect parallel. How do love and respect differ, and why are they different needs, whether it's a marriage or the relationship between parents and kids?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I actually could have written this book first, but I wanted to wait until my children were grown. I actually have my PhD in family studies, and I did my dissertation on effective fathering, but I wanted to wait until my children were in their 30s before I attempted to write a book on the family. And it's the concepts of love and respect are actually coincidental. The Ephesians 5:33 passage, where a husband is to love and a wife is to respect, and we unpack that, particularly in culture where the idea of respecting a man is not particularly appetizing. But from a biblical perspective, children are to honor their father and mother. Exodus 20:12. Jesus quotes that in Matthew 15:4, where he says, God said. He doesn't say Moses said. He said, God said, honor your father and mother. And Paul quotes that in Ephesians 6:2, honor your father and mother. In other words, when children are not getting their way, they tend to be disrespectful. They tend to show dishonor. They don't necessarily intend to be, but it's very natural for them to be disrespectful when they are not happy. And on the other side of that, Titus 2 tells mothers to love their children, but that's not with agape love. It's phileo, a friendship. When she's exhausted, she doesn't like her kids, though she loves her kids. But what happens, even though parents have this agape love within their hearts, children don't always feel that. And fathers can provoke their children to anger, Ephesians 6. They can exasperate their children so they lose heart, Colossians 3. And here's the bottom line. We can have this love for our children, but they don't feel it. And our children can truly love us, but they don't always react in ways that feel honoring to us. And so a crazy cycle is formed. When a child feels unloved, that child tends to react in a way that feels disrespectful to mom and dad. And then when mom and dad feel disrespected, they end up reacting in ways that feel unloving to the child. So without love, a child reacts without respect. Without respect, a parent reacts without love. And it can spin out of control real quick. And in this book, Love and Respect in the Family, I talk about my own family of origin, where I was disrespectful. I was sent to a military school at age 13, and I was there until age 18. I know what it means to be disrespectful and the consequences of that. And I know what it means to be unloving as a parent and the many failures. In fact, I didn't want to write the book. The last 2 years, I wanted to quit it. My kids, who are adults, said, Dad, if you can't give yourself grace, how are other parents going to receive grace? And they actually are the three who have endorsed the book now as adults. So I'm humbled and honored by that. So that's a quick overview of the message.
You know, you mentioned in writing this that you wanted to wait until your kids were grown. And, my most obvious question would be, why? Why was it? I mean, I think I know why, but it seems to be the difference between, you can always approach biblical topics from just the mind and say, the intellect, this is the way things work. But relationships aren't always that clear cut. They can be very messy. So why did you feel the sense of responsibility? I think it does seem like it was a responsible thing to do, to wait until your kids were grown. Why don't you kind of flesh that out and unpack it for us?
Well, I think partly over the years, I've heard many stories where a pastor, and I pastored for 20 years, I studied the Bible 30 hours a week, and so I looked at every passage dealing with parenting, and we can talk about that. But as a pastor, it always saddened me when a man would be up behind the pulpit telling a family story, and the teenager, would lean over to his buddy and say, "It didn't happen like my dad is saying it."
Hmm.
And that duplicity, that hypocrisy, and I've heard it so many times, and I was not raised in the church. I came to Christ when I was 16, then went to Wheaton College, and I heard so many stories from fellow students who were raised in, Christian families, but they felt their parents were hypocritical. And so I said, you know what? I'm probably blind to myself. I know I'm sincere. I know I've got goodwill. But I told the Lord, it'd be better for me just to wait on this. Even though I think I've got rich insight on some of these fronts, I think it'd be better for me to let my adult children speak to this. And I remember hearing people say, you really don't know how good of a parent you are until your children are parents, and that there is a real wisdom in that. And so I just made a decision, to wait. There isn't any condemnation of others who don't. But in my case, I wanted to bring a book that hopefully will be a legacy, that not only is it biblical, not only is it academic, but it talks about my own family of origin in very real, transparent ways, and my failings as a parent. I tried to bring a whole level of things together, and I know people who have looked at it said it has a uniqueness to it in that there is a penchant toward practicality and transparency, but also the biblical theology of the family and parenting. And so I just waited to hopefully serve people well with this, and that's my story.
My kids are grown. I have a 30-year-old daughter, a 23-year-old son. So our relationship has changed, as relationships do between parents and kids when they get older. But you talked about Christian parents being hypocritical a lot of times. How does a Christian parent, for those who still have kids in their home, in other words, young, growing up, how does a parent avoid hypocrisy? And of course, we're not talking about how does a parent be perfect, because no one is, but how do you at least avoid being a hypocrite as you raise your children?
Well, first of all, I think that we've looked at what the Bible says to parents about parenting. I haven't just taken principles that might apply to a mom and dad. I looked at what God has revealed to parents about parenting, as I did with the love and respect in marriage. I looked at what the Bible says to husbands and wives about marriage. For instance, 1 Corinthians 13 is not about marriage. 1 Corinthians 7 is about marriage. And when we don't take the author at his word and we start applying things, it's not that it is evil, but it certainly isn't the greatest of wisdom. So, too, God has revealed things to parents about parenting, and I've tried to set that forth. And I believe that the word of encouragement to those who are listening who feel like maybe they're hypocrites, God has a game plan. I spoke to 5 NFL head football coaches and their spouses, and one of them who was there was Tom Coughlin and Judy, and coach of the New York Giants, and he asked me to come speak to the whole team, and I did. But we talked about strategies and game plans. And, you're going to get your quarterback is going to get sacked. There are going to be losses. You're going to lose games. But there's a game plan. And for parents out there, God has given us a game plan, and I set it forth in an acronym called GUIDES, GUIDES, giving, understanding, instructing, disciplining, encouraging, and supplicating. And those 6 concepts come out of the salient scriptures to parents about parenting. And I believe if we stay with this game plan, we won't be hypocrites. We will not be hypocrites. But when we consciously and willfully violate these things and never seek our child's forgiveness, for instance, that's when we begin to feed into this problem that Paul referred to husbands. You're going to exasperate your children, and they're going to lose heart, and then you're going to lose their heart. And that's what my dad did toward me. He attempted to strangle my mom to death when I was 2.5, and then he committed adultery when I was 11. We had a swimming pool as part of our business, and I was playing with him on one occasion, and I irritated him. I was about 8, and he held me under, stood on me, and I thought he was playing. And then I tried to get up, and he wouldn't let me up. And I'm about to inhale water when he let me up. And as I came up out of the water, I looked at my daddy, and I thought, a daddy shouldn't treat his boy this way. And my dad lost my heart. Now, I came to Christ at age 16, and at age 18, my dad received Christ, as did my mother, sister, and my brother-in-law, who's a professor. So we were not Christ-following people, but my dad hurt me. He wounded me, and that kind of thing. And he never sought my forgiveness. And Sarah, my wife, was raised by a single mother, and she said, my mother was a wonderful mother, but she never said she was sorry. She never said she was wrong. So if parents stay on the game plan, they won't be hypocrites. And when they blow it, if they apologize, they won't be hypocrites.
We're talking to our guest today.
Yes, Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, who is founder and president of Love and Respect Ministries, written a wonderful book called Love and Respect in the Family, the respect parents desire, the love children need.
Doctor, one of the problems with parenting, and you know this, is it's a learn as you go deal. So, you can't go through it. You can't go through well, I guess you can go through a class, but I mean, you can't graduate from parenting and then let's do it in real life. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So how do you, what advice do you give to parents in terms of the whole issue of discipline? Because, you get advice that's all over the map. Spank them, don't spank them. Take away stuff, don't give them stuff. You need to learn. They need to learn. I don't know. How do you handle the area of discipline of children?
Well, I think what you said earlier, Howard Hendricks says, just when we're competent, we're out of a job.
Yeah.
Isn't that the truth?
I've said, I'd have been a great parent had it not been for my children. So, we all, are, feeling what you're just saying. And I think I love Hebrews 12:10, where it says that our fathers discipline us according to what seemed best to them, seemed best. And I make the point in the book that there's no absolute formula to parenting. There's a subjective element. And each day we've got to do what seems best. And one of the points I make about the acronym guides is you can give too much, you can give too little. You can understand too much in kind of a pseudo-psychological approach and you indulge a child's self-pity, or you can understand too little. You fail to empathize with them. You can over-instruct, which is what I did with my kids. I used to write 3-page papers on a topic for them, and they would just roll their eyes because my teaching gift would kick in, But there are people who instruct too little. And I know so many who simply don't bring anything up. And you see that with the Eli in the Bible. You see that with King David. They didn't confront. They didn't instruct as God intended. Discipline, as you referenced, you can over-discipline a child, and you can be brutal with them. And we're all very sensitive to the issues of violence. But you can be one who under-disciplines. As for encouragement, you can give false praise, but you can fail ever to really acknowledge anything that they've done right. And as a supplication, you can pray too much in the sense that, Moses was told, don't pray, get on with it. And sometimes you need to do what God asks you to do as a parent, not just always pray about things. But then I don't know how many parents we've had say to us, I don't think I've ever prayed for my children. And so each day I have parents come down through the acronym and just relax. But, today, how am I doing on that? Am I doing what seems best for my child? On any given day, it may not be the best, but you know what? If my heart's in the right place and I stay in this game plan, in the long run, they're going to show up for Christmas and Thanksgiving with their children, and you're going to be good friends. Joy said when she was 16, my daughter, to Sarah, face it, Mom, we're never going to be best of friends. And today, they're best of friends. Yesterday, they got off the phone after talking for an hour.
Isn't that the way it goes? Love and Respect in the Family, that's the title of the book, The Love Children Need. And Dr. Emerson, how do you pronounce your last name?
Eggerichs. I was born with it.
Eggerichs.
Oh, Eggerichs?
Eggerichs.
Oh, I've been
Eggerichs.
mispronouncing it all show. Sorry.
Well, no, you can no one can get it right. I even stumble over. But I think one of the points that I want to make to that parent out there, and I think you guys would be encouraged by it, we have this idea that good parents have good children and bad parents have bad children, and we stop there. And so then, if children are misbehaving, it must be a direct result of the bad parent. And if kids are great, well, it must be that the parents are good. But biblically, we see two additional stories, of good parents having bad kids and bad parents having good kids. For instance, the bad parents having good kids, Josiah became king at age 8 and sought the Lord at age 16, and he reformed the nation through his godly wisdom. But his father and grandfather were wicked dudes. So go figure. What happened there? And then in terms of a great parent, good parent, we think of the prodigal and the prodigal's brother. I mean, the second born was an indulgent, sensual, sexual, person who splurged his inheritance, and there was a second child, the firstborn, who was self-righteous, angry, and judgmental. Now, my question is, this father, who is full of compassion, would we ask him to come into the church and lecture us on how to parent? And the answer is no. And yet Jesus Christ holds him up as an illustration of Abba Father. And here's my word to those who are listening. Many of you are living in shame, but you've stayed on the game plan, and you have done what God wanted you to do. There's been no intrinsic evil. Yeah, you said no to your children. That was a good thing to do, not a bad thing to do.